I had my own brokerage firm called Bella Securities. I had a couple of small employees part-time, and I just worked and I worked and I worked, and I became basically the American success story. You know, I was a history major out of college from Brooklyn. Hello, my name is Randy Beller. I'm the branch manager of TradeZero America. I've been doing that for about 4 years now, but this is where I started, here on the New York Stock Exchange. In 1981, I started as a runner, which meant that you would run tickets around the booth, and this was pre-automation, pre-online trading. Most of you probably weren't even alive yet. But I got hired a few years later, and by 1985, I had a seat on the exchange here. By 1987, I had my own little business, and I worked here from 1981 to 2015. I represented all the big companies down here: Goldman Sachs, First Boston, Donaldson, Prudential Bates. Most of these guys are gone now. Started here when I was 21 years old, right out of college, with a major in history and a minor in political science, but there was no excitement there. But I came down here, and the excitement was unbelievable. It was like playing basketball every day. But there was a lot to learn. You know, you had to read up on the charts, you had to learn about the stocks, and you had to have discipline, a lot of discipline, which is very similar to the day traders need. There's a lot of discipline. You have to know what you want to do, and when it's going against you, you got to get out quick. And when I was down here trading all those years, you had to go with your gut sometimes. Even though you thought it was right, you knew it was wrong, and you just had to get out right away. So a comparison of retail trading to the floor is you got to be, like I said, you have to be very disciplined. You have to use your own mind. Even though people are always giving you ideas, you have to be confident in them and don't follow the herd. A lot of people follow the herd all the time, and nothing good comes of it. You get in short because everybody else is short, and you wind up, everybody's getting sold out, and you're stuck in the mess. I mean, you know, you really got to do your research too. Before you short a company, before you trade a company, you need to just know what they do and why they're up 100% or why they're up 500% before you commit all your capital to that. So a day I'll never forget is October 19th, 1987. I had just started my own business a few months before that, and things were going great. And everybody was on a big upride here. Everything was really happy, and then all of a sudden the market just went crazy and it crashed. And things that were $50 were $5. And one of the things I was selling Gillette. Somebody gave me an order to sell 250,000 shares. I started selling it around $35. I finished at 19. I went back to the client and they said, "Great job." And I'm looking at myself, I mean, I'm new, pretty new at this stuff, and it's like 35 to 19, great job. But the stock continued to go down to 3 that day. And obviously things came back afterwards, but it was just the craziest day. A couple of days after that, a lot of the old timers retired. The partners of some of the older firms, they just had enough and they just wanted to walk away with something, and they couldn't take those kind of swings. And it was just crazy. That night we were here until about 8 o'clock, and back in those days, it took 5 days to clear a trade. So if you made a trade on Monday, you didn't know if you had any breaks until the following Monday. So every day we were on pins and needles for, like, if you made a bad trade, somebody wasn't going to show up on the other side. It was just insanity. And that's when technology was just starting to come into the business a little bit, where they were able to pair trades off electronically, and clearing wound up going down to 3 days, and now it's 1 day, and now it's same day. And that's where technology took us as far as clearing goes. So, you know, talking about that Gillette trade, I went into the crowd with this giant order. The market's just tanking, and you're just terrified, like, you're going to be able to sell it. Are you going to be able to sell it? I remember selling like 20,000 real quick, and then after that, the market started dropping by points. And I'm just hoping that somebody comes in as a buyer. And I kind of remember Goldman Sachs coming in around 25 level and buying about 100,000 shares from me. And then after that, it just kept breaking and breaking. And finally, when I did get out at 19, I was sweating. I was so happy to get out of that stock. It was like, oh my God, let me get back to the booth and give these guys their reports, because you couldn't even tell them what you were doing because you couldn't walk out of the crowd to give reports. Started that trade with 250,000 shares, and when I got done, like I said, it was down to $19. I started a little bit over 35, and I got you did a great job, and I felt like I ruined the stock. When I got back to look at the stock afterwards, it was trading at 14, and it wound up going down, I think, to 5. It was just crazy. It was just a crazy day. So one of the biggest risks I took down here was in 1987. I was working for another broker, and I was 27 years old. I was making $100,000 a year back then, and I said, you know what? I have a shot to go out on my own and see if I could do better by myself. So I talked to my ex-boss. We set up a deal where if I did all his business for free, he'd sponsor me to get my own seat. And I wound up doing it, and I wound up starting a business which I maintained from 1987 to 2008. I had my own brokerage firm called Bella Securities. I had a couple of small employees part-time, and I just worked, and I worked, and I worked, and I became basically the American success story. You know, I was a history major out of college from Brooklyn. So the biggest trade I ever did on the floor was a 1 million share mobile print. Now back then it was all manual, so you had to go out and solicit, you know, you'd get the trade. So Deutsche Bank put me up to do a trade for them. And they said, you know, I want to buy 1 million shares, I forget the price, let's say $40, sell what you have to, and then buy it back, which meant that I had to short whatever the floor didn't have for us at that time. And so I think I got help on about 300,000 or 400,000 shares, and I was short 600,000 shares. So I go back to the booth, I tell them, listen, you're short 600,000 shares. They give you an order to buy back the 600 shares, you know, buy everything back that you can, and then you stand there and you're trying to buy back up to 600,000 shares. Now, once a print would go on the floor in the old days, it was different than where, you know, everything's seen. It would have to get out in the world. You know, people would come in, you know, who did the print, who did the print? So people would come and say, who did the print? And they'd say, Deutsche Bank, he's here as a buyer. So I'd be there coming in, and the next few minutes I was able to buy back probably 400,000 shares of it. And then the Deutsche Bank broker wound up taking over the rest of the trade because he got back from wherever he was at the time. But you know, one of the things is, the reason I got these big trades is because I basically out-hustled the competition all the time. I was out there, I was always available, I didn't take days off when I first started. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew who I was there. I wore a bright turquoise jacket so they could always find me on the floor if anybody needed me. They'd say, get Randy, get Randy. And that was it, and I was always there for them.